participate in this because we not only have storytellers across the US, we actually have my friend Caroline O'Brien, who is going to be doing a story from Brisbane, Australia. So,
all right, yeah, wow. Nice.
So we will be known as now the International Storytelling Show.
Excellent.
So, I decided that, since right now everything is a little heavy, I decided that I wanted tonight to be, funny stories. So that's why tonight's theme is a funny thing happened at work. So we're talking about anything funny that happened to you on the job, whether it was at your expense or at someone else's expense. So let's get started. Our first storyteller is actually, I met her at the Cincinnati Fringe Festival. What was it? Oh my God, I think like 2007?
For me, yes, it was 2007.
Yes, it was 2007. I was doing one of my solo shows, I guess, and she was touring with Calculus the Musical.
Oh, I saw that. I remember that.
Yes, yes. So,
and I still am.
So, from Minneapolis, Minnesota, put your hands together for Sadie Bowman.
Yay! Yay, Sadie!
Hi. Thank you. Oh gosh, there are 5 kittens running around, so if I scream or dart out of frame, it's because they're doing something naughty or climbing up my leg. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm gonna tell a story about what I think was probably the funniest job I've ever had. So it was a year before I met Les in 2006. I was in my mid-20s and I was on the brink of a huge life change from which I would never return. I was poised to leave my respectable arts administration job, which was good full-time work I enjoyed with potential for advancement. I was gonna give up my killer 1-bedroom apartment in a Loring Park brownstone and leave it all behind to go on tour. And that is the same tour where a year later, I met Les at the Cincinnati Fringe. So very much like Les, I cut my professional teeth on the Fringe circuit. I traveled from town to town with an independent show, and it is an unpredictable living in the best of circumstances. So to give ourselves a better shot, my partner and I decided to eliminate every possible expense. We planned to give up our apartments and everything that tied us down, planning to literally live out of our car and surf on couches for the indefinite future. We knew our expenses would be low, but so would our income. So as we counted down to departure, I was scrambling to shore up every last nickel of money I could possibly earn. So on top of my full-time office job, I was picking up weekend stagehand work and scouring Craigslist for any and all odd jobs. So let me tell you about the oddest and the best. It was all thanks to a 90s craze that I had no idea was still sweeping the nation in 2006, a craze called Pokemon. The Pokemon Journey Across America was a tour of shopping malls across the nation to celebrate the anniversary of Pokemon. Each stop was a regional video game competition that would send the top video game players to New York for the first ever national Pokemon championships. At each stop, they were hiring locals to do registration, run games, lead activities for kids in the 12 and under division, and just general crowd control. I will admit, I didn't particularly see this as my scene, but it was a 2-day gig, 8 hours each on a Saturday and Sunday, plus paid orientation, paying something like $15 an hour, which seemed like a regal sum to me at the time. I was happy for an opportunity to sock away some bucks, even if I was not so keen on the controlling crowds of children part of the deal. I thought, it's 2 days, I can do this. Anyway, I thought Pokemon was already passé, so it probably wouldn't be that crowded anyway. So I bust out to the Mall of America that Friday night after work for orientation. I'm guessing about 100 people crowded into a rarely glimpsed meeting room. We were mostly sitting on the floor with some folks standing around the perimeter of the walls. I remember it being really crowded for some reason. The corporate team handed out red team jackets with the Pokemon Journey Across America logo, made us sign a bunch of papers, including an agreement that it was totally okay to put that jacket on eBay, but not until the Journey Across America tour was over. They handed out a thick manual of protocol to cram before tomorrow's big event and started giving overviews of policies before making official team assignments. The biggest part of the manual were profiles and biographies of every single Pokemon character. They expected everyone to be conversant in Pokemon, all the characters, all their potential mutations, and to enthusiastically and knowledgeably answer any questions that an obsessed child would come up with. I didn't even know Pokemon was still a thing, let alone anything about how many characters there even were and their complicated backstories. I was starting to really doubt that I had what it took for this job. I felt like my best shot was to hope for one of the 8 coveted registration positions rather than any of the hands-on gaming activities, because that would be the most straightforward. I was just crossing my fingers that I could get out of one of the many jobs that involved interacting with children or roaming around blowing a whistle, which is where it seemed like they needed the most help. It turned out they were expecting thousands and thousands of kids and their families over the course of the weekend, because everybody but me knew the Pokemon was still a thing. I was getting a little queasy and overwhelmed as I thumbed through the catalog of Pokemon characters that I had to have opinions about by 8 a.m. tomorrow, surrounded by thousands of freaking experts, when one of the corporate folks walked in and did a quick scan of the room. I thought she was just like counting heads to take attendance or something, so I didn't pay her much mind until she waded into the throng of folks sitting on the floor and tapped me on the arm to come with her into the next room. I don't know exactly what divine light of providence was shining down upon me. But being short had a lot to do with it. Corporate Pokemon lady said she needed one more costumed character, and would I be willing to shift gears and be Pikachu for the weekend? I fidgeted with my manual a little bit, hoping she wasn't going to call on me to list Pikachu's attributes and likes and dislikes and powers, but I was pretty sure Pikachu was the one everybody liked.
Pikachu.
Okay. So what did being Pikachu entail? And why did she single me out for this golden opportunity? Like, could she tell by looking at me in that crowded room that I was a born performer about to embark on a committed professional career, and I was the best equipped to interpret the role of Pikachu with 12 hours left? Well, yes, but in simple reality, they just needed somebody who was less than 5'4" to fit inside the costume. And at a glance, I guess I was the shortest person sitting on the floor. I don't know. I literally don't know why they picked me, but they did. So all I had to do was climb inside a giant foam shell about as wide as I am tall, waddle around with the aid of a handler, which was going to be another temp they would pull from the throng learning procedures in the other room. I had to tug on ropes that dangled kind of down inside this cavernous shell that I would be occupying, and that would make my ears wiggle to let the handler know when I needed to take a break, and most importantly, Number one responsibility of my job was do not talk to a child under any circumstance. I was made for this job. Oh, and because it was sort of uncomfortable and in certain situations could be a little dangerous to be inside the costume for too long, I had to take a 30-minute break every 30 minutes. So I'd be paid for an 8-hour shift that would only include about 4 hours of actual action. And it paid like half again as much as the hourly wage I had signed up for. So I had seriously one of the best weekends of my entire life. Most of the day seemed like it consisted of languorous breaks in a back room, drinking ginger ale and eating mixed nuts. It was protocol that nobody could be in a costume for more than like 40 minutes at a time, so there were lots of breaks. These breaks would be temporarily punctuated by my handler, a 17-ish-year-old young man named Kevin, helping me one leg at a time into these giant foam boots that came up to my thighs. After I had both the boots on, he would help me lift this giant yellow orb over my head. I would kind of shimmy into it like this, and then I could make my entrance as Pikachu. Inside, it was actually pretty spacious. It was about like this, I would say. And it was a little musty, a little humid. I could definitely sense the residue of salt from all the people who had sweated inside this costume on its journey across America. But it was pretty spacious, and I could bring a drink in with me as long as it was water. I could only... I had no peripheral vision whatsoever. I could only see out of this little square of mesh, like probably about this big, that was directly in front of my face. So that was the only way that I could see anything on the outside. My legs were ensconced in those thigh-high rubber foam leg casing things, and then covered by the costume shell that came down about to my knees. So I could only move my body by shuffling my feet in a forward motion a few inches at a time. Turning to the left or right was only possible if Kevin took one of my flipper-like hands in his and used his other hand to guide the rump of my costume, steering me imprecisely through the hallways from the back room out to the atrium. Leg casing things, and then... Sorry, was that a question? Oh, okay, I'll continue. Yeah, so that was, oh, and the only way I could communicate with Kevin was by tugging that pair of ropes that dangled down in front of my face. These were connected to Pikachu's ears, and I could use them to make cute pika pika movements and to delight the children and to let Kevin know I was ready to go back to the break room. And again, most important part of my job is don't talk to children. That didn't mean children couldn't talk to me. They had so much to say to me. Universally, all weekend, faces would just light up, and kids and parents alike would croon "Pika Pika" at me nonstop. I had no idea what that meant, but their enthusiasm was infectious and always inspired me to give those ropes a jolly tug and twitch Pikachu's ears in reply to their absolute delight. Excuse me, I just got a text. Sorry about that. Because moving around wasn't practical, I just sort of stood in one spot, bouncing lightly with my knees, and throngs of kids and families would surround me, waiting for their turn for a photo. A lot of them had questions, some about the physics of electricity, some about Pikachu's family history, likes and dislikes, all kinds of things that were probably in the manual but didn't concern me because I was not allowed to talk. All I had to do was bounce a little, tug on the ear ropes. I had the occasional little fucker who would run up and kick me, but the foam boots and spacious shell of the costume kept me well protected, and I could silently in its direct direction, and nobody would ever know. It was so fun. There was only one time my cover was almost blown. The lower part of the face part of the costume had a mesh opening underneath this sort of beak thing that served as Pikachu's nose and mouth. Like just this wide open, like smiling mouth. And it kind of like made a little awning over this piece of mesh. This was my only source of ventilation, and it allowed me to have a limited, hazy view of the space directly in front of me. This one kid committed a gross violation of personal space, even at that innocent time. I think maybe she thought she was gonna kiss Pikachu on the mouth or something, so she pressed her face directly up into this mesh opening and locked eyes with me. Her face contorted into a mask of shock, and she yelled, "There's a girl in there!" I had nowhere to hide, and I couldn't talk to her, so I just held her gaze. I folded half of my face into an exaggerated wink, brought one finger up to my lips. She looked mortified and backed away slowly into what I can only imagine was the beginning of a long road of therapy. Most of my time on the floor was endless photo ops and thousands of kids hugging my exoskeleton and exclaiming, "I love you, Pikachu! I love you! I love you!" It was this whole weekend of relaxing in a break room, punctuated by waddling around hilariously while children professed their undying love in my general direction. It was great. The most memorable, one more encounter, the best thing that has ever happened to me, was with this boy of around 10 years old. You know, he was just about to edge over that cusp of childhood and into that cynical space of early puberty. Just old enough to feel a slight shiver of proto-embarrassment over things that would soon elicit sickening self-consciousness, but still young enough to hang on to a pure sense of imagination and a genuine enchantment with things that captivated his enthusiasm. He broke away from his smiling dad, sidled up for a photo, and then before walking away, almost as if he promised himself he wouldn't do this, but the feeling was too strong to let the opportunity pass him by. He turned back and he flung his arms around my exoskeleton in a fervent expression of passion. "I love you, Pikachu," he exclaimed, the crack of emotion in his wavering voice. "I know you're the one who started it all." As he ran away, there was a tear glistening in the corner of his eye, bubbling up from his still innocent, loving heart. That little boy must be about 24 years old now, almost the age I was at the time of our encounter. I hope his heart is still as full of gratitude, awe, and unironic love as it was in 2006. So I answered a Craigslist ad out of desperation to earn a few bucks because of my own financial anxiety. I thought I was going to be shilling myself out as a drone for a corporate publicity event for a stupid cultural phenomenon I thought was no longer relevant. But on top of everything else, I got a tightly framed view through a small square of mesh into some of the purest aspects of humanity. And that's something I can really wiggle my ears for.
Yay.
Yay, that was Sadie Bowman. Sadie Bowman from Minneapolis, Minnesota. All right, so if you are just tuning into this, this is the workplace drama show where we tell stories about jobs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I am your host, Les Kurkendaal-Barrett. And so now we are going to head over to the other side of the country to New Jersey. Now, this person is someone who, speaking of workplace drama, I actually have a job with. One of my many jobs is I co-host a podcast called A Lifetime of Hallmark. And it is a podcast where we make fun of movies on Hallmark and Lifetime and try to make sense of them. So, like I said, this person is my co-host. I get my life's goal is to torment him as much as possible. Put your hands together for Fitzpatrick. Yes!
Woo!
Why do you live in a cave? 10 years ago, I was an actor with an agent, but I had a very, very bad agent. She once called me and told me that she had gotten me an audition to play the Geico caveman. You remember those commercials? Sign me up. Now, the first audition was in Philadelphia. So I drove in from New York wearing a dark blazer with my hair sticking up at all ends, the way I thought a caveman should look. And I went in for my audition and they started filming me and they wanted me to improvise with them. Why do you live in a cave? They asked me. I answered, because I love my cave. I've wallpapered it and I have some nice cave furniture. And stop, you do not live in a cave. You are supposed to be insulted by that. We're gonna have to start over. Okay. That didn't make a lot of sense to me because I was a caveman. Wouldn't that indicate that I live in a cave? If I no longer live in a cave, can you really in good faith call me a caveman? Well, I didn't say that though. I did what they wanted. I don't live in a cave. A few days later, I got a call from my agent telling me that out of all the people who auditioned in Philadelphia, they liked me. I was going to Baltimore for the second round of auditions. Now I must admit that there's a part of me that wondered how this woman was able to get me such a high profile audition in the first place. I mean, she didn't seem to have very high level accounts. The last and only audition she had gotten from me was for a religious industrial film where they had me read for the role over the phone. I don't even know what a religious industrial film is. She charged me money to have my picture posted on her website. And what is always a bad sign in the world of agents, she taught modeling classes out of her office. Trust me, no one is learning how to walk the runway at William Morris. But still, I was blinded by possible Geico caveman fame. I took a bus from New York to Baltimore, and then I took several local buses to a Holiday Inn where the auditions were being held. Baltimore was near the corporate headquarters of Geico, so I figured, well, that makes sense. And I was sure to be auditioning in front of some major executives. And if I get this, and I sign a one-year contract to do national commercials, I would be financially set. All the free plays, all the student films, those indie films that never got completed and are sitting underneath someone's mattress, all the improv shows I did, it's all gonna pay off now in actual cash. I could get my temp job at a proofreader at New York Life Insurance. So I arrived early and I paced the hallway. So this is it. I told myself, this could be my major break into national exposure. I walked into the audition room, ready to show these major players the talented machine that I had built.
Yeah.
When I walked in, there were no major players. There were just two people sitting on a long table as if they were having lunch. I did my audition, and one of the people at the table said to me, by the way, this isn't for a commercial. There seems to be some confusion. We're looking for someone to dress up as the Geico caveman and appear at basketball games.
No.
Kind of heard his voice trail into a mumble. So I was auditioning to be a mascot. And nothing against mascots, but I came all the way to Baltimore thinking that I was in the running for a hugely lucrative commercial deal where I could perform in commercials in front of millions of people.
Oh,
I didn't say anything. I walked out of the room. And I stood outside the Holiday Inn by the road and waited for the first bus of many to take me home. Called my agent. I told her what I had actually auditioned for. That sounds great, she told me. I'll pray for you. After the local buses brought me to the Greyhound station, which was next to the trucker massage parlor. Not it just paints a picture. I had 3 hours to wait for the next bus to New York. I've got rent due. I can't afford to eat. My life is a mess. I don't know how much more this I can take. But I've got 3 hours. So I take a walk. And I come across a place that says live sex show. And I figure I should support local theater while I'm here. So I go. And I walk through a hallway of ladies sitting in glass booths. One is on her phone. One is reading a book. Another woman sees me and she comes out. Why don't you get in my booth? Well, how does this work? Well, you go in that booth and you watch me take off all my clothes. Really? I haven't seen you here before. Oh, well, I'm an actor. I was here for an audition. Oh, get in the booth. Tell me more, okay? See, I'm an actress myself. I recently was an extra. I played a sexy little baby walking across the street behind, oh, what's his name? Lieutenant Dan. Gary Sinise? You walked behind Gary Sinise? The ceiling opened and light shined upon me. And I heard the name Gary Sinise as if it was something like chorus of angels. Gary Sinise. Yes, I will accept this into my life. I too will walk behind Gary Sinise. Gary Sinise. I will become a non-union background actor, earning near minimum wage, working 10 hours a day, stopping only to have a glorious lunch where I will take home extra lemon chicken in the Cool Whip container that I brought from home. Gary Sinise. That is the story of how I became a background actor. Thank you.
Oh,
Kurt
encore.
Fitzpatrick.
More.
Thank you, Kurt. And like I said, Kurt and I actually co-host a podcast, A Lifetime of Hallmark. If you are a fan of Hallmark or Lifetime and take them seriously, which we don't, but check out our podcast. All right. So if you're just tuning in, this is the workplace drama show where we tell stories about our jobs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Normally it's out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but today, me, Les, your host, is here in Los Angeles. But we are going to hear from Allison Warren, who is the owner of Strike Theater in Minneapolis, where this show normally is.
Woo!
So, Allison, take it away.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
Hey,
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Like Les said, my name is Allison Brewer, and I'm one of the co-owners of Strike Theater. Since we have storytellers and people from all over the country here, if you're unfamiliar with Strike, we've been open a little over 2 years. We're a nonprofit theater that's dedicated to storytelling, sketch comedy, improv, and spoken word and original works. So we have about 100-seat black box theater in Northeast Minneapolis, and obviously we're closed right now because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So we've been closed since March. Anything that you might be willing, audience members, to donate to Strike Theater for being here tonight, we would appreciate that. But we also just appreciate, we know times are weird for everybody, so we also just appreciate you being in the audience. I'll post a link in the comments. Right now, the biggest thing that Strike Theater is looking for is monthly donors, whether it's at 5, 10, 15,
$1,000 a month, you do you. But that's the easiest way that we're able to plan at this point in time. Back in November, we launched a big campaign asking for monthly donors. And we were like, because you never know what can happen when you run a theater and a nonprofit and all these things. Anything can happen. The worst case scenario can happen. And now we're just living that. And so right now our monthly donors, 80% of them are less than $20 each per month, and they're currently covering almost 20% of our rent and monthly expenses, which has just been such a blessing for us going through this. So if you're able to and willing, please think about shooting over there. I'll post once again in the comments. We also have 6 days of shows happening right now. This is our second of 6 nights. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we have a great show called the Encyclopedia Show happening. Each night is a different night of fact-based art on a different topic. So you will be edutained, as we say. There is a fact checker that will tell us the truth and lies in people's arts as they educate us on different topics. So you can also go to strike.theater to see our upcoming shows. Another thing you could do is we are starting some sketch and storytelling classes via Zoom. And usually we charge for all those. And right now we're doing them just for donation basis. As long as they collectively raise $500, we will run our classes. And the awesome news about our upcoming storytelling class is that we had a very generous donor donate the $500 to open it up so people can join for any donation amount to help spread the love of storytelling. So if that's something you're interested in, head over to our website once again and sign up for a spot for any level. We just need bodies in the class now. It'll be super fun. I want to thank you all for spending time with us. We hope to see you throughout all of this online, and hope someday we get to meet all these amazing storytellers in real life in Minneapolis. Thank you so much, everyone. And Les, I'll throw it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Yay!
Strike Theater is a wonderful place, and it's like, I never thought that I would have a regular home to do a storytelling show. It still boggles my mind. It's an amazing place. So yeah, if you have anything to spare, throw it to them. All right. Okay, so this next performer is, let's move. So we've gone to New Jersey, we've gone to Minneapolis. Now we are going to Indianapolis.
Yay! Oh,
where I met this next storyteller actually when I've known you, how long? Yeah, Taylor, I've probably known you for about 10 years too.
10 years, 10, 15.
I met Taylor.
Yeah. Were you in the first Indie Fringe?
No.
Okay, you were in the second or third, so that'd be about 12 or 13, yeah. Okay.
So yes, I've known Taylor a while. Taylor is hilarious. So put your hands together for Taylor Martin.
All right.
Ta-da. Hi there. Oh, look, the old girl looks pretty good still. Not bad. Hi, I am Taylor Martin, and just a quick explanation so you understand a little bit what the stories are about. I am a magician. I'm a character magician. I not only perform as this face, as Andrea Merlin, the Queen of Magic, so designated by Penn Jillette himself, but also as Rodney the Elder and Rodney the Younger, who are colonial and Renaissance magicians. And there's also another lady magician named Esmeralda Falindo, who's Gypsy Queen of Magic. And she's going to come into it an important part in the first story here. So there's 2 stories here. Here, it's a new wig. What can we do? It's just, there we go. Okay, anyway, the first story happened about 20 years ago. And this was in Bay Village, Ohio. I was doing a Renaissance fair as a gentleman named Rodney the Elder, who was Rodney the Younger father. And he does all the Renaissance fairs. Now, the first time I'd worked this fair, and they wanted to do something different for the King's Banquet. Now, the King's Banquet usually happens on the night before the fair, and they bring all the patrons in who gave money, and they do, usually the knights come in and they joust and fight and everything. Well, the guy who had hired us said, I want to do something different, and I know you do drag. Can you do something? I said, well, why don't we have the gypsies take over the banquet and I'll become a gypsy magician, gypsy lady magician. It just came off the top of my head. And he said, okay, we'll do it. So So I have this wonderful thing where I play the burdus and I have everything, and I come in as Melda Esmeralda, and we throw out all the knights, and we go and the gypsies start doing shows. So I start doing magic show as Esmeralda. And one of the tricks I do involves pearls and a bag and everything else. And I invite a little girl up to help me. Little girl, you are wonderful. You come up and help Esmeralda. And so this little girl comes up and she's wearing this princess outfit. She's got the hat. She's looking very pretty. And the idea is that I take some loose pearls, throw them into a pouch, rip it open, jumps up in the air, and it becomes a string of pearls. I'll tell you about how I saved the reputation of the Queen of the Netherlands. So I looked down at the little girl. I said, little girl, you have been so nice to me tonight. I will give you this as a present for helping me. And she just clutched onto him. She was great. It turns out it was a good thing because she was the granddaughter of the lady who was the chairman of the fair. Oh. So I was in like Flint for the next 3 years that it was open. And it was great. And the little girl sat there and she loved what I did and everything the whole time. So the next day I'm out on the outside and I'm in front of the stage, it's Rodney the Elder. And there's this little girl on the front row sitting on the hay bale. And she's got the necklace on. She's still in her princess outfit. And so afterwards, I come on down. I said, well, it's nice to see you. Did you enjoy the show? She said, oh, Master Magician, this lady magician gave me this necklace last night, and I just haven't taken it off. And I went, oh, I fooled her. And then she says to me, and as much as I liked your show, I think she was better than you. Out of the mouths of babes, right? Okay, so that's the first one. I mean, it's with kids and everything, you know. She was just a doll, and actually, she came back the next 2 years before going to the next one. She came back the next 2 years, and she sat right there. And I still don't know to this day whether she knew that Esmeralda and Rodney were the same person. True story. Okay, so story number 2, which is also true. Every year, as Rodney the Younger, who is my colonial character, I go down to Hendersonville, Tennessee, and I perform in front of a 200-year-old limestone house that was built by Daniel Smith, who was a hero of the Revolution. And they have 4th and 5th graders come in from all the schools to a colonial fair. So it's not only me, but it's also there's a goat herder there. There's somebody playing the colonial games with the children. I have some friends of mine who are curio exhibitors, sort of like out of what Smithson did, which later became the Smithsonian. And so I'm getting ready at this show. And you can always tell the 4th graders because they've always got shirts on that says, "May the 4th be with you." And they're all running around and having time. They're petting the horses and everything else. And all of a sudden, this one boy comes up to me and he stands out in the crowd. This was a field trip with about 900 children. And here he was in a 3-piece white suit, tie, waistcoat, the shiniest shoes you ever saw on a 4th grader. And he comes up to me and goes, "You ain't no real magician." I said, "Well, I'm as real as they've ever been. There ain't no such thing as magic." I said, "You're right. It's the art of deception." "Well, there aren't no magicians." I said, "That's right. We're all actors playing the part of a magician." And for the next minute, he tries to egg me on into an argument. And finally, his friend in the 4th Be With You t-shirt next to him hits him in the ribs with his elbow and says, "Would you shut up? He's agreeing with you." And so for the next 3 shows, that boy in that 3-piece suit, shiny shoes, tie, yeah, I think he even had a watch chain, sat there and watched every show. And when the magic happened, his mouth dropped open in amazement. When the people were supposed to applaud, they did. When they're supposed to laugh, they did. When they're supposed to, be quiet, they were great. And he just was mesmerization. And as I got off the stage after the last show, he comes out to me, he goes, "You're a real magician." And I said, "I'm as real as they've ever been." And that's the truth. So there you go. Maybe not so funny at the end, but at least you get the whole idea.
Oh,
there.
it was great.
Oh, yay!
Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, stay all week, try the fish. And I will be probably up in Minnesota, maybe in the winter for actually for a burlesque show. I don't know if it's going to come through or not, but you know, that's the way things happen. So I love you, Les. I love you, Kurt. I'm just so glad that you're both healthy and happy, and glad I could help out with this, folks. As my father used to say, have a great day and a better day tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor. Okay, so far we've been to Los Angeles, we've been to Minneapolis, we've been to New Jersey, we've been to Indianapolis, and now we are going to New York. I met this next storyteller actually at the Minnesota Fringe a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And he's a great storyteller. So put your hands together for Jamie Brickhouse.
Hello, Minneapolis. Hello, Los Angeles. Hello, New Jersey. Hello, world. And hello, everybody out there in Zoom land. You know, I was a book publicist for many years, and the one thing that wasn't in the job title, or rather the job description, was to take Joan Collins shopping. But I was so glad that I was taking Joan Collins.
Oh, girl.
shopping. Yeah, oh, girl. That Joan Collins.
Drag
Joan
queen's
Collins,
heart. Oh,
Joan
girl.
Collins, aka Alexis, for those young children out there who may not know. She's been on other shows that I don't know about, but I grew up worshiping her and watching Dynasty. And I was one of those pretentious queens that when Dynasty would come on, I would get a cheap bottle of champagne and cheap caviar at the grocery store, and you know, and watch Dynasty in style. And so I was so excited. And at this point, I was 30 years old. This was 1998. I had worked with other celebrities before, and you know, so I was a pro. But most of the celebrities I'd worked with, I didn't care about. You know, they just weren't, I wasn't fans of them. So it wasn't that big a deal. But this was like, oh my God, I get to work with Joan Collins. And I was so excited. But of course, I was really nervous because, you know, would she be like Alexis? Would she be a mean bitch? And, you know, and I wanted everything to go smoothly. And so as a book publicist, what I did is it was working on, we were publishing her second memoir called Second Act. And so I set up all the media interviews to promote the book, you know, you know, she was doing shows like the Today Show with Katie Couric in those days, and Live with Regis and Kathy Lee. There was no Kelly Ripa. I don't know if she was even born. But you know, all the major daytime shows and all that. And but I had a little bit of help because she was traveling with her kind of manager assistant, who, you know, I would just go through him to set things up before Joan actually came to New York City. And I got to work with her. But he traveled with her as well. He was also British like her. And he was also gay like me, older, short, round, bald, kind of an Elmer Fudd type. He had absolutely no hair. And he was just all pink and rosy, kind of the way I look right now on Zoom. And you just need to baste him and stick him in the oven. So I called him the Butterball. And so anyway, Joan actually, we got on. She was very stylish, very chic. I wouldn't call her warm, but she wasn't a bitch. And she kind of appreciated my sense of humor. So on this, you know, we had a couple of days in New York City where she was doing the rounds of all those interviews I was just talking about. And on this particular day, we've done a whole round of interviews, and she has a book signing at Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue, a lunchtime book signing at 12:30. And and I have to tell you, the day before, all right, one of my biggest regrets in life, the day before, I was alone in her suite while she was down the hall doing a taped interview in another room down the hallway. And I'm taking inventory of what she's got there, the LV luggage and the, you know, and the cigarette she smoked, you know, slightly. She drank white wine on ice. I noticed that at the party, so that wasn't hanging around the room. And then I go to the bathroom there are these two huge hat boxes, big round hat boxes. I'm like, hats? When does she wear it? She doesn't wear hats, does she? I mean, does anyone wear hats? Does anyone still wear a hat? It was 1998. Who wore hats? And then I was like, oh, those aren't hat boxes. Those are wig boxes. And I lifted one up and yep, there it was. That kind of, even though it was 98, but still that, Alexis 1980s, short updo, lots of volume.
The swoop,
chestnut brown with some blonde highlights, and I was like, oh. And and then she also said that and I knew this, but that she wore wigs because she said, oh, it's much easier, Jamie, because then every time you go to every interview, they want to fuss with your hair, and it's just much better if you got a wig and it's just done. So if I had a camera, and of course in those days you didn't travel with a camera on you, or I didn't anyway, and you didn't have cell phones with cameras on them. Believe me, I would have taken that wig out, posed with it in the mirror, and taken my picture. Sick to this day that I didn't do it. So anyway, the next day, as I said, we were doing the round of interviews and everything's going very well. I have booked her on all the stuff that she likes. I've got everything, we've got a great itinerary and everything, we're on time and blah, blah, blah. We have a car and driver that's taking us around. So we're done with a few interviews and we have a bit of downtime before the book signing at Barnes & Noble. And Joan says, let's hit the shops. And I said, oh, absolutely. Where do you want to go? Well, I do like a good bargain. And there is a DKNY outlet on in the 50s, just off 7th. So we go to the DKNY outlet and we, it's not storefront. It's you go up an elevator in a building. And there's a DKN entrance to the DKNY outlet, and to the left is Gotex bathing suits, which I don't think exist anymore. And they were these, but I knew them. I knew Gotex because my favorite drawer of my mother's was the bathing suit drawer because she had some Gotex bathing suits with those hard cups. And I love those hard cups that I just, you wanted to serve chips and dip out of them. So we, as we're entering DKNY, Joan says, oh, Gotex. Oh, what a pity they're closed. I could use a new Gotex. I absolutely live in my Gotex at my home in the south of France. And then I just imagined her like in this white one-piece Gotex with hard cups and a gold belt, having coffee on the terrace overlooking the ocean in the morning, and then eating a lobster salad with a glass of Chardonnay at lunchtime with girlfriends, and then in the evening presiding over a cocktail party with a Kir Royale, all the time wearing the same white Gotex. And then I wondered if that Gotex crotch rot by the end of the season, but I didn't ask her that. So we go into the outlet and she knows how to shop and I can see her. She is combing through that stuff real fast. And I find this really nice black nylon 3/4 raincoat. And so we walk up to the counter and she's ahead of me with all of her loot. And she looks, oh, what do you have there, Jamie? And I said, oh, it's this little raincoat. She says, oh, it's very smart. And I was thinking, oh, maybe she's going to buy it for me. Which I don't think, I wouldn't have thought that about any other author client I was with. But, there's that you get caught up in the celebrity moment and celebrity love. But no, she looked at me and she said, you should get it. And I did, and I still have it. So then we're done there. And she said, oh, well, let's Saks Fifth Avenue is right nearby, isn't it? I said, yes, let's go there. So we go, and the car and driver drops us off, and he parks on the side of Saks Fifth Avenue, on the side of the street. And she and the Butterball and I get out, and we walk into the store. And we have about maybe half an hour or so before the book signing at 12:30, and the Barnes & Noble is just down the Fifth Avenue, a couple of blocks. And so we gather at the perfume counter, and she and the Butterball make a plan. And she says, Butterball, I am going to go upstairs to Lady's shoes. And then after that, I don't know where I'm going to go. I'm just going to wander around. What are you going to do? Well, Joan, I am going to go over to men's furnishings just over there. And if I don't find anything that I want, I'm really not interested in anything else. So then I think I'm going to walk carefully over to the information counter and wait for you there. Oh, lovely, Butterball. I will meet you at the information counter at 12:20. I mean, it was like they were plotting the perfect murder, or they were explaining how the stock market worked, this whole cloak and dagger act. And I stayed out of it. I just kind of observed it. And then they turned to me, and then she said, what are you going to do, Jamie? I said, well, I think I am going to run down to the Barnes & Noble and just to make sure everything is, everything's set and it's all, in place and all that. And then I'll run back up here and pick the two of you up at 12:20. And I couldn't help it, but I mimicked their accent. They didn't catch it. And they said, very well. So we scattered. And everything's fine at the Barnes & Noble. I come back up there and I'm there at 12:19. The Butterball is there at 12:19 next to the information desk. And he didn't find anything in men's furnishings. 12:20 comes, no Joan. 12:21 comes, no Joan. Where do you suppose she is? I said, well, I don't know. I mean, it's only 12:21. No, she's very unlike her. She's never late. 12:23 comes. Well, you know what? Let me run out and see if the car driver is still there. So I run there and the car driver is still parked there. Like I come back, well, she didn't take the car. 12:25 comes, no Joan. And he's starting to sweat and I'm starting to get nervous, but I say, you know what? I'm glad that you two worked out this plan and it wasn't my idea. So 12:26 happens, no Joan. I said, you know what? Let me go to the information desk and see if they can page her. And let me tell you, if they could have paged Joan Collins, if I had heard over the loudspeaker at Saks Fifth Avenue, paging Joan Collins, Miss Collins, please come to the information desk where your faggot publicist and Butterball are waiting for you. But the information guy said they don't have a paging system. So he said, but I can call. And I said, well, I know she was going to start in Lady's Shoes. So he called Lady's Shoes. Oh, yeah, they saw Miss Collins, but she headed over to the swimsuit section. I guess she was looking for that goddamn Gotex. Called the swimsuit swimwear section. No, yeah, they saw her, but nope, she wasn't there. They called Better Dresses. They saw her there. Nope, gone. And at this point, I said, so when they're done with these calls, I said, let me run to the car driver again. And I run out, and the car driver's gone. I'm like, oh no. So I come back. I said, listen, the car driver's gone. I bet she took it. You just stay here just in case she shows up. I'm going to run down to the book sign because it's now like almost 12:32. And so I run down there and big crowd. And my boss is there and said, oh. I said, what, is she here? He said, oh, yeah. He said, the car drove up and I'm waiting for you and for the Butterball to get out. And only she gets out and that wig nearly flies out of the back of the car. And she is seething. And he says, Miss Collins, let me tell you. She says, he says, where are, and she says, never mind, get me in there. So they had gotten her to the book signing. And so I walk, he tells me this, and then I walk in and there's a big long line. And I can see over the stacks, over the book stacks, I can see her wig bobbing up and down as she's signing books. She's sitting at the table signing books. And I get there and there's some adoring fan and he's going on about, oh, I loved you in the girl in the red velvet swing and the opposite sex and of course Dynasty. And she's smiling and signing. And then she sees me out of the corner of her eye and she cuts her eyes over me and she goes, where the fuck were you?
Oh
afterwards,
my God.
she said, what happened? And I said, we were there. We were there at 12:20. What happened? Well, I got flustered. I couldn't shop. People were starting to mob me and wanted my autograph, and I forgot the plan and finally got in the car and drive and got out there. So we got over it. We had a good time, and when she was done with the, when she went back to Los Angeles, she left me all the wonderful flowers that everyone had sent her, and a few bottles of really good champagne, not that cheap Gordon Frixonet that I was drinking back in high school when I was watching Dynasty. And so years later, I'm at a book party for R.J. Wagner from Heart to Heart, and he and she were tight back in the day and still were friends. And I'm at the party, and she shows up about an hour into the party. And I said, "Oh, hello, Joan." She goes, "Oh, hello, Jamie. How are you?" And I said, "You're a little late. I was getting worried. I thought we were going to have to hunt you down at Saks Fifth Avenue."
Oh.
How would you be a dear and get me a drink? Thank you.
A great moral. Bravo.
Thank you. And if you want to know more about me, you can go to jamiebrickhouse.com, where you can find out about my memoir, my solo shows, and other performances. Thank you, Les. I love you, and thanks for having me on the show. And y'all donate money to the Strike Theater. They need it.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
Jamie, you brought back memories. I remember. Okay, I'm going to date myself. Back when I was in college, we would play Drink Dynasty when Dynasty was on in real time.
Yeah.
When it was, I think it was when they said a name you drank, when they showed the La Mirage you drank, and then when they would fist fight, you had to guzzle a drink. Yeah, good times.
I loved it. I used to drink to Love Boat. Yeah, and I would always be the boat, because then every time they showed the boat, you drink. So I got real bad.
Shoot, the only time I ever drink is when Alex Trebek speaks French on Jeopardy. So
Hey, Taylor, I'm coming to Indianapolis in March of next year for a gay thing, something. Yeah.
Fabulous.
So
Okay.
I'll connect with you.
Okay, yeah, I'm on Facebook. Yeah. And since people are putting plugs in, also, I am a magician, and I produce Indie Magic Monthly here in Indianapolis, which we will be starting up again, hopefully in July. So,
Yay!
Yay! We'll see what happens. All right. I mean, I'm not going to push it. So,
all right. So far we've gone to Los Angeles, we've gone to Minneapolis, we've gone to New Jersey, we've gone to Indianapolis, we've gone to New York, but now we are going to the future. Why? Because we're going to Australia, and it is tomorrow in Australia. Our next person is a very good friend of mine and a fabulous storyteller. So put your hands together for my very good friend, Caroline O'Brien.
Yay! Caroline!
Woo! Welcome down under, guys.
Hi.
It's tomorrow. It's Sunday, so the world has survived. Don't worry about the world ending tomorrow. We're still here. It's Sunday morning. You guys were fantastic. I've so enjoyed having story time. This is great. So I used to work for a resistance guerrilla leader who went on to become the first president of his country once it was liberated, and a Nobel Peace Prize laureate at the same time. But this story is not about that, because their good deeds might hide my idiocy, because I have a gift for idiocy. So I wanted to tell this story because it encapsulates my special gift. So I was working it was my first job after graduating. I was working as a reporter for a media monitoring company. So I was getting ready for work one day and rushing out the door, as I'm always rushing out the door. And I'm rushing out the door, and I see this white lace curtain just sitting there in my home. And I don't know where it's come from. I don't know what it's doing there. And I think, I'm going to take that to work, because you just never know. So I take the white lace curtain with me to work. I kind of did know. Anyway, I get to work, and I work for this huge media monitoring company, a news company. So what our job is that we have to write a summary of the news. So, for example, just checking, I'm not on mute. So for example, what we would have to do is I would get a 5-minute news bulletin, and I would have to write up a summary, getting all the names and facts and titles and companies right. And I had 5 minutes to listen to that, go and get the tape. It was one of those like old school tapes that you used a pencil to wind forward. Go and get the tape, listen to 5 minutes worth of news, write up and edit and send it off all in 5 minutes, and it's a 5-minute bulletin. So we'd all be listening to these news cassettes with headsets on. The company is super quiet. We're on the top level. There's like a long row of reporters all doing the same thing. We've all got our headsets on, and we don't have time for nonsense. You know, you've only got that 5 minutes, and it's not enough time to get the job done anyway. And there's no turnaround time between getting different cassettes or anything. And along the other wall, there's a big long wall of editors that are editing the stuff that we are producing and sending it out to clients. And this is like an open tier level. The company is like, the whole building is open design, so you can see down from the top level to the next levels, and everyone can hear everything. My first day at this job, I walk in, it's the first time I'm wearing like, you know, sensible, like a suit to work. And I walk in and there's a girl in the waiting room who I know. And she is this lovely girl. We both worked at the movies together when we were studying at university. And she was studying communications and I was studying journalism. So they said they've never hired two people on the same day before, but they just did with us. So Irene and I, who were friends from the movies, and she is the sort of person that comes across, she's very smart. She comes across very serious, very thoughtful, but you know, she's got this naughty side, like this 10% naughty that comes out, and this very dry sense of humor that she mostly covers up with seriousness. So Irene and I start on the same day. At this company, every day we've got televisions everywhere because we've all got to be across anything that's breaking, any breaking news. So all of the news, all of the televisions on every different station dotted around. And we also have a woman who provides our lunch. So every day we go down to the lunchroom, and this beautiful woman who really loves a daytime television. So her television in the lunchroom is always set to daytime television. And she particularly loves a little known show called Days of Our Lives. And I always say there are two types of people in the world. You might not know of Days of Our Lives because there are two types of people in the world. People who watch daytime television and people who admit to watching daytime television. So I don't know which of the two that you are. So anyway, we would all, as we went down to get our lunch, we would all catch little bits and pieces of Days of Our Lives. And this became part of our lives. Les admits it, I love it. So this was the era where, and you've got to remember, we are like 3 years behind on everything pop culture in Australia. It is tomorrow, but in many ways it's 1970. So at this exciting time, we find ourselves, Stefano De Miro is the evil guy, the evil genius, and you remember him. And we find ourselves in his mansion, and his daughter Kristen is there, and there is a woman. We don't know if she's a woman, who kind of lurking around the secret corridors of the De Miro mansion. And she's dressed in white, like white lace kind of wedding dress. And she's got this white veil over her face, this white lace veil over her face. And she only has one line all of the time. She's always lurking in the background of things going on. And she'll see the serious conversation and she'll see the fallout after the serious conversation. And her line is this. Oh, she's always very worried. She's like a little bit of anxiety. Anyway, you can't see her. We don't know, is she a ghost? We don't know what this woman is. She's just referred to as the woman in white. So at this serious, quiet news organization, occasionally when walking past one another's desks, we'll say, oh, well, occasionally I will do that. Nobody else does it, if I'm honest. So I go to work one day with this lace curtain, and I've got a plan. And as soon as I see Irene, serious but a little bit naughty Irene, walk away from her desk in this quiet news organization, she's gone to the restroom. I crawl under her desk and I put the white veil over my head. It's not an N95 veils. Veils are not a substitute for masks. This is not like a PSA. Don't do this at home. So I put the white veil over my head, the white curtain that I've brought from home. And Irene comes back to her desk and she goes to sit down. It's a normal day in a normal workplace. She pulls the chair out and she sees me there, and very quietly, because I'm professional, I go, "Ah." It scares her so much. She screams like this massive scream, and the whole company, all the floors of the company are looking at her. Like, and she's usually a very serious person, and they're like, "What is going on with Irene?" And she's like, "Get out. Get out." Like, and I would not leave while people were looking, and she would not sit down while I was there. So we were just having this standoff with her standing at her desk and me underneath with this ridiculous veil on. And so eventually, when people stopped looking, I crawled out against the wall and with my white veil kind of tucked behind, and went back quietly to my desk. And no one ever knew why Irene was screaming in the workplace.
Bravo!
Yay.
Bravo!
Caroline.
Excellent.
Okay, so Caroline, I still watch Days of Our Lives. I watch Days of Our Lives every day. As a matter of fact, what is happening right now is Stefano DiMera had his essence put on a flash drive, and they took the flash drive and put it in Patch's brain. So Patch thought that he was Stefano DiMera. But they took the computer chip out, so Patch thinks he's Patch again. But now, Kristen found out that her baby that she thought was dead was actually switched at birth with another baby in the hospital.
But wasn't her baby like a pillow that she was having underneath?
No,
her?
she really had one.
Remember,
They-
she faked a pregnancy, because we used to say, we had a girl in the same workplace whose name was Kristen, and she was a very shy girl. And we used to ask her how the baby's going, the pillow baby. How's your pillow baby, Kristen? And she said, one day she said, "I shall call it Tontine," which is a brand of pillow.
But no, Kristen finally got pregnant because they whipped up a baby in a lab and impregnated her. And
Was it,
wait.
was it impregnated by a stick, a memory
No.
stick?
by Dr. Rolf, Stefano's.
Because you know it's not the size of the memory stick.
And then
When did
one
this
more
start
thing,
getting written by Harlan Ellison?
And then one more thing. So Stefano's son, Stefan
It's aliens.
just came back from the dead. So that's what's happening. So now we've gone from Los Angeles to Minneapolis to New Jersey to Indianapolis to New York to Australia. But now we are back in Los Angeles. This next gentleman hosts a fabulous show here in LA, a fabulous storytelling show called Strong Words, which I've done many times. And if you're ever in LA, you need to come check it out. It's a great show. And he has actually been to the Strike Theater himself, and he has done the workplace drama show in Minneapolis. So put your hands together for my friend, Larry Dean Harris.
Yay!
Hey.
Jamie, it's good to see you. That was a nice surprise. I did Terry Mintz's show with Jamie last New York, and Jamie handled an audience issue with such aplomb. Jamie, do you remember this night? You're muted. We can't hear you. So I'll just tell the story. The performer before Jamie got up and she told a story.
Yes, I do remember, but please tell the story. I didn't realize I was muted.
She told a story that I'm pretty sure didn't have a point, and it definitely didn't have an end, but she brought gifts in crinkly bags
And it
for
was
the
half an
audience.
hour.
It was a half hour. It just went on and on and on. And
Yeah.
poor Jamie had to come back and sort of save the night, like bring everybody back, which is really hard to do. And then in the middle of his story, which was fabulous, people in the audience are fishing through these Target bags, these really crunchy, loud, crinkly Target bags for this crap that she's brought.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But you handled it really well. You didn't sort of break your rhythm, which I thought was fantastic. he just sort of like, like, could you please fucking stop, taking to the back during my story.
There was something in my story, and I said it was so annoying when this happened. And I said, kind of as annoying as these ladies right in front of me who were going through these makeup bags. Could you please stop?
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was so brilliant. So it's good to see you again.
You too.
And I love your big New York apartment.
Well, thank you. Here.
My story is about my tiny New York apartment, so that seems appropriate. All right, let's dive right in. I live in LA, but I'm from Ohio. I'm from like farm town, Ohio. Like it was a big deal when I moved to Toledo, right? But growing up in farm town, Ohio, I used to tell people, they're like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to live in New York by the time I'm 25. I want to live in New York City by the time I'm 25. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know how that was going to happen. And it almost happened when I was in college. They invited 3 promising graduates to go interview at this advertising agency on Madison Avenue. And I was one of the 3. And it was me and Stephanie Lopazinski. And I can't remember the third person's name. Her name was Connie. But I think it was Connie. But Connie got the job, which, was fair. I liked Connie. But that was sort of my New York dream, shattered. And then one day, it was like 3 weeks before I turned 25, and I was still living in Toledo and no plan to get to New York. I get this FedEx out of like clear blue sky on the doorstep, First FedEx I had ever received from New York City. And it's the company, the agency that I had interviewed for, and Connie, or whatever her name was, had fallen in love, and she was moving to Italy. And they said, well, who could we possibly get to replace you? And she said, why not Larry? And it turns out I was their second choice. And so I get this job offer out of nowhere to move to New York City. So I go, and I see Connie, and I can't believe it. And she tells me the best story, that Stephanie Lopazinski at the job interview pulled the owner of the agency aside and like grabbed his arm and looked him in the eye and said, I would do anything for this job. So that's why she didn't get the job.
Oh,
Isn't that wild? I was like, that little whore. So I moved to New York, and I get this like sublet. It's like a subatomic sub studio. Have you ever heard of a sub studio? It's smaller than a studio. Sublet, Hell's Kitchen. We got a crack dealer in the building. It's the 80s. Like this was New York when Times Square was Times Square, drugs, hookers, guns. It was awesome. And I get this job in this Madison Avenue advertising agency. And, because I'm from Ohio, I'm always the first one to arrive and the last one to leave. And they put me in this office I'm in a room that was round and brown with no windows. So imagine like 10 to 12 hours in a room where all you looked at was like brown walls, and you couldn't put anything on the walls because they were round. And I'm in this room with 2 very loud New Yorkers, Harold and Debbie. And they talk like New Yorkers, and they would call me Larry. And I spent so much time with them that when I would go back to Ohio and I would say, let's go visit Mary. And people are like, why are you talking that way? But when you spend that kind of time with people, it just kind of, sinks in. But it was a tough time. I was not a good fit, but I had this fantastic sales rep from Architectural Digest, and he was super fun. And his whole thing was, I have to spend time entertaining. I have to take you out and do things. So we would go to dinners and movies. And his whole thing was that the movie, where you saw the movie, was just as important as the movie itself, right? So we would go to the Carnegie Cinema. There used to be a cinema under Carnegie Hall to go see the Woody Allen movies with the Jewish ladies at, the matinee. And then we went and saw this movie called Action Jackson. Does anybody remember this? It was Carl Weathers from the Rocky movies. They were trying to make him into like a James Bond kind of person.
Yeah.
So we go to see Action Jackson, the midnight show, Times Square. So we go in and there are armed guards with guns and everybody's getting stoned. And there's a scene in the movie where the bad guys have caught Action Jackson and they're going to cut off his testicles. And all of a sudden, like 100 women in the audience stand up, start screaming, you know, don't you dare, dear God, don't let him do it. They like really thought that was going to happen in like real life. And I'm like, this is not like Ohio anymore. But it was just an odd fit all along. I went to be a writer. They hired me to be a writer. And then I get there and they said, so here's the deal. We've resigned this account and we're short an account person. So we know you've got account experience. So we just need you to service this account until the contract runs out in 3 months. And I'm like, okay, I guess I could do that. I said, what's the account? And they said, Royal Jordanian Airlines. And I'm like, Royal Jordanian Airlines, which was nonstop to Amsterdam and Amman. So I go for my first meeting, and it's this angry woman named Samia. And it turns out the agency has been basically neglecting Samia for the last 6 months, and she's not happy. And she's decided she's going to take it out on me. And I don't blame her. And every day, she calls and my day begins, you know, I get there early, make coffee, everybody comes in, and at 9 o'clock the phone rings and it's Samia screaming at me, just screaming and screaming and screaming. And finally one day I screamed back and I just said, stop! None of this is my fault and you know it and I know it. So could we just skip the screaming and get to work? And there was like this long pause and I thought, you're fired. And she said, okay. And it worked out great. And every day I just counted. I had a little, you know, calendar, like how many more days was I going to have to sort of deal with Samia? And it's 3 days before I get my life back. And the boss calls me in, Mr. Vengus, and he says, hey, we just lost a serious chunk of business. I need you to go back to Samia and ask her to keep the account. And I do. And Samia is like smiling like, I own you. So I don't know, Jamie, you can probably attest to this, but New York is one of those places where people like to commit suicide in like spectacular fashion. You know, they don't go quietly. There was the Marriott Marquis employee that jumped in the atrium. Yeah. Remember that? And landed with like a big splat right in the lobby, like 20 stories down. There was the person who, like, one of the favorite things was like to jump on the bridge so you would stop all the traffic coming into the city.
Sure.
So, you know, you would have these sort of spectacular things. And my buddy and I, we worked together and we both sort of had our own little suicide fantasies. And we decided the best thing, because we worked in this building on the 23rd story, it would sway in the wind. We decided that when we couldn't stand it anymore, we would lock arms and we would run and throw ourselves through the plate glass window and lock arms all the way down and aim for the little hot dog vendor cart on the street, because we thought that would be a spectacular way. I mean, that would make, you know, all the newspapers, just hot dogs flying, you know, that big colorful balloon.
Oh God. But
we didn't do it. But I went back to Mr. Vengus and I said, I can't do this. Mr. Vengus was an odd man, by the way. He would invite you in for a meeting and he would change clothes in front of you. Oh. And he would always strip down to just his underwear. Like he wouldn't take his shirt off, put a new shirt back on. He had to go all the way down and then rebuild. And I told Debbie about this, my office mate, and she goes, oh, that's nothing. I used to have a boss that would call us in and have a meeting while he took a shit.
No.
I'm like, you heard everything? She's like, everything.
Plop, plop, fizz, fizz.
Smelled
Jeez.
everything.
This is New York, just a little after Mad Men days, when I guess, you know, men were still pigs. So I go to Mr. Vegas and I'm like, I'm dying. She's killing me. I'm dying. He's like, okay, we're going to put Bob on the account. You're going to work under Bob, but Bob will handle Samia. Great. Bob was like old school Madison Avenue type, you know, kind of a leftover from the Mad Men days. He was always like cocktailing it. And he would go meet with Samia, stop off for a few afterwards, and then come to the office late, leave a pile of work on my desk with a note that just said, Larry, please handle. And that was the way Bob handled things. So I had moved to Toledo, to New York from Toledo, and I had a car to deal with. My sister said, I need a car, so how about I just take over your payments? I said, that sounds great. So 6 months into the job, I get a call from the car financer, and they said, you haven't made a payment in 6 months.
No.
I'm like, wait, what? So I have to get a second job. And one day I'm walking on my way home to New York, down 44th Street. And I wander past One Schubert Alley, this little trinkets and trash store. And there's a sign in the window, help wanted, nights. So I would leave my dreadful job on Madison Avenue, which I made a decent amount of money, and I would go work for minimum wage at One Schubert Alley. And I would fold t-shirts with cats on them, and people would come in, and they were always just so happy because they just left the Phantom or whatever, and they wanted to talk about it, and I love to talk about it. And it was just, you know, it was like the happiest place on earth for me because I was part of Broadway. And I worked for this woman named Gila, and I only met her once. I met her the day she hired me, and I never saw her again. But she was always with me because there was always this camera in the corner. She watched us from her apartment. And every night, at the end of the night, the phone would ring and she'd be like, how are sales? How are the sales? How are the sales? And it was just kind of creepy knowing that there was just always this eye, like while she was cooking dinner, doing whatever she did at her thing. But I worked with fantastic people, and we had the most amazing times, and we laughed, and because they were all sort of Broadway wannabes. And one night I'm in the store alone, and this gentle old man walks in, and it's Roddy McDowell. You know, Cornelius from Planet of the Apes. And I remembered him from The Legend of Hell House. We talked about Hell House. And he was the sweetest, nicest man. And he said, you know, I can't do accents, but he said, I'm hoping you will help me. I'm shopping for my friend Liz. And I need something. I want to take her something. She loves the Phantom of the Opera. So I'm showing him, you know, sweatshirt. He's like, she's not a sweatshirt person, you know. And finally, I knew exactly what she would love. And I reach into the special cabinet, the locked cabinet. I unlock the cabinet and I pull out the Phantom of the Opera perfume atomizer. And he's like, splendid, perfect. So he takes that, he takes a whole bunch of stuff, and then he pulls out his checkbook because it's 1987. And I'm like, we don't take checks. And he's like, and I said, wait, make it out to me. I'll cover it.
Oh.
And for one night, I had a check from Roddy McDowell, and I got to be the personal shopper for Liz Taylor. Isn't that crazy? So I did this for about a year, and I didn't heart New York. I didn't. It was dark, and it was crime ridden, and there was the shadow of AIDS was everywhere. People weren't even kissing. They were so afraid. And I missed the sunshine, and I got a call for a great job back in Ohio. And I said, I'm out. So the last day at One Schubert Alley, my pal Benji reaches into the cabinet and he turns off the video camera and he says, happy last day, you have 90 seconds to shop. So I take the Phantom of the Opera glow in the dark sweatshirt, and I take programs from all the Broadway shows that are long closed that
Nobody
I know
gave a
that,
shit
you
about.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. And the phone rings immediately. Of course, you know who, and Benji's like holding her off, trying to explain there must be a problem with the video camera. She knew, she was like on it immediately. And I still have the key ring from Starlight Express, this like metal key ring. It's so sweet. And I just had the best time. And it was like 25 years later, I learned that the person they hired after I left was Aaron Sorkin.
What?
He was my replacement. So
Unbelievable.
Bravo. What a
on my
great
last
story.
day at the agency, everybody's gone. I'm closing up and I'm leaving thank you notes for all the people who were kind to me. And then I get to Bob, Bob who had just piled work on and, didn't do anything. And Bob didn't know I was saving something for him. I was saving all the work for about the last week and a half. And so I took that work and I put it back on his desk with a note that said, Bob, please handle. Thank you.
Yay!
Oh my God, Larry, that was a great story.
He makes it out of the red chair.
Wow. Oh my God. That was Larry, do you know how rich you'd be today with all of those human resources violations? That was, oh my God, that was incredible. If you guys are ever in LA, you have to make it to Strong Work. It's an incredible show.
Thank you.
All right, we are in the home stretch. We are almost done, so which means we are back in Minneapolis. So this next person, okay, so if you ever make it to Minneapolis and if you ever make it to a workplace drama show, one of the things we do is we leave out time for any audience member who decides that they want to tell a story of a work-related theme. We leave time for audience members to come up and tell stories too. And so this next person coming up to the stage is a friend of mine, and she got up to tell a 5-minute story a couple of months ago, and she's been hooked on storytelling ever since, which is great because it's like, okay, my job is done. A new storyteller. So put your hands together for my friend, Maria Ghassemou.
Woo! All right.
Yay.
I'm gonna tell a different story, and I just now changed my mind on which story to tell. Okay. Every once in a while, Wells Fargo does these lift events, right? Where they give down payment money to low-income people in certain neighborhoods because they want to revitalize the area, right? Actually, it's like part of a settlement from, back in the day when they were people over. But something good came out of it, this down payment program thing. Anyway, so I was working at one of the down payment program things using volunteer time. And after, we always go out and party, right? Because it's like people from all over the country, like today's storytelling, but we all come together to run these events. And this one was in Minneapolis. So I was like, yay, I don't have to travel. Here I am, right? So it's over for the night and we're going to go party, right? Usually we're drinking, we're like bar hopping. And because it's Minneapolis, they're like, where should we go? And I'm like, I don't go party. But we started like walking around. And then we were picking up more people along the way because everybody knows people in all the cities, right? Because they work these things so often. So one of the people that we pick up says, oh, I know this great club. They do burlesque. It's going to be great, right? I honestly don't remember the name of it, but it's right across the street from Ave. So we start walking to First Ave. We get in the place. We have to pay a cover before we, get in, which is fine. But before we even pay the cover, I'm looking and I'm like, this is a strip club. She's like, no, burlesque, right? So we pay and we get in And it is a straight up strip club, like naked bodies, right? It's a work event. So we're like, I think we should, I don't think we should be charging drinks at the strip club to all.
Just work it, girl. Just keep working.
So we decide to get out of the strip club, and the manager is all pissed off because we haven't bought 2 alcoholic drinks yet. We're like, we're also not staying for like 2 titties. We're taking off, right? So we just go to like whatever the other bar across the street from First Ave. Now, so we're just chilling there. The person that brought us to this club works in HR.
Oh. Oh my God.
I couldn't stop out of her because I kept running into her at other volunteer things. And I was like, remember that one time you brought us to the strip club? That's my story.
Bravo. Yay.
You too could have been a rich person too with the human resources violation. Okay, you guys, this is it. The final story of the evening. So basically, we've been across the country and now we are back in Minneapolis. Now, this last storyteller is someone who I have also known for years. I have done several festivals with him. God, we're like Indianapolis, Los Angeles, like all over the country. And he's a great storyteller. So put your hands together for my friend, Howard Leiberman.
Yay, Howie!
Hey.
There he is.
So, people know me as being a bad boy. People have seen me do shows like 55 minutes of sex, drugs, and audience participation. People in Indianapolis have seen me kiss Les Kurkendaal before he was married on the lips, on the stage in Indianapolis. And
yeah, but no tongue, no tongue.
We were going to be run out of town. And I have been naked many places. In a club I frequented called Patrick's Cabaret, there were these 2 men sitting down, and one of them looked at me and said, "Oh, are you Howard Leiberman?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've never seen you with your clothes on." And so people think I'm just this bad person. The storytelling community in the Twin Cities says, stay away from Howard because he scares us. But I wasn't always this person. I used to be really shy. I used to be understated. I would go to a party and basically not talk to anybody because I was too shy. And my timer, never mind, who cares? No one else has kept the time. And I'm living in Montreal. I was evading the country before most of you were born. It was during the Vietnam War, and there was America, love it or leave it, and I left. And I was living in Montreal, right next door to Gordon Lightfoot. You may never have heard of, but who cares? Anyway, I answered an ad. Writer needed. True journalistic expertise required. Now, I am a writer. I've written poetry since I've been 5. I'm published in several different countries. And I thought, well, I can get a serious job under an assumed name because I was living illegally in Montreal. My name was Ken. And so I come in and it's called Globe Press. And I'm interviewed by a young man about my age. He said, we're looking for a writer who can put a little punch into what he writes. What do you think about that? I said, oh, yeah, I can use the money and I'm fairly punchy, I guess. And so he said, do you know what we do here? I said, you're a journalist, you write journal stuff, right? And he said, our publications are Close Up, Blow Up, and Midnight. Those are the newspapers that you find by the counter with naughty stories. And we need a new writer. Sure, I can write. And I wrote the first couple of stories were, I don't know, something to do with this kind of sex or that kind of sex. I wrote the horoscope. I wrote the sex horoscope, which it was made up. I don't know anything about astrology, but people enjoyed it. And then one day, the publisher, a woman, is in the office and she says, I'd like to see you in my office. Well, I thought maybe I was getting a promotion. I'm a good writer. So she comes in, I go into her office and she comes in dressed to the nines, and I look like I'm looking now, except I didn't have a sweatshirt and I just had a t-shirt. And she said, you're a good writer. She said, maybe you'll win a Pulitzer Prize one day. But this is not what we do here. We're not looking for Pulitzer Prizes. We're looking for sex. She says, say some sex words for me. I said, intercourse. She said, you mean fucking? I said, penis. She said, cock, pulsing rod. How about dripping honey pot? What's a dripping honey pot? She said, it's a cunt. He said, have you ever heard that word, Mr. Pulitzer Prize? I said, I've heard those words, but I don't use those words in polite company. She said, well, we're not polite company. We're trying to sell product, and your articles, the things that you write, you have to have short paragraphs, one paragraph of dialogue, one paragraph of action, dialogue, action, dialogue, action, dialogue, action. And you can never use the same word twice for a body part. If you've said cock, can't use it again. If you've said penis, you gotta go penis, you gotta go pot, cock, you gotta go, okay. So I said, I'm smart, I can do all these things, right? So she said, I'm gonna give you a special. I'm gonna give you the spread. I said, is that slang for something about which I should know? Is that like some kind of last thing? She said, no. The spread is the 2-page feature we have in every issue of Close Up. And I'm giving it to you. And if you fuck it up, you're fired. But if you do good, you're an assistant editor. She says, what's your title gonna be? What's my title gonna be? I don't know, I've never done a spread. I thought a spread was naughty. I didn't know what a spread was. So I'm sitting there and I went, I've got it. I sexed a gang of thugs to save my sister from rape. She said, now you know what you're doing. And so every other paragraph, my sister calls me. She's in with the wrong crowd. She's gonna get raped. I'm thinking, what am I gonna say? So how many words do you know for body parts? Okay, how many here, raise your hand. Have you ever heard of dripping honey pot? Of course not. I made that up. And if you have, you heard it because I created it. Now you can talk about a Johnson, but if you don't live in Minnesota, you don't know what a Johnson is. What the fuck is a Johnson? In case you don't know, a Johnson is another word for a prick, a cock, a pulsing whatever, and this and that and that thing. So I did this 2-page spread. And the main character is an older sister who goes and has sex with, fucks, gets gangbanged by a gang of bikers. And when she agrees to do this, they let her younger sister go. It was a heroic story. I mean, it was, you know, and the publisher, she says, you've got it. You know what you're doing. You're now the assistant editor. And I went on and I wrote more spreads. I constantly did the astrology. And then one day I get a phone call from the Traveler's Companion yellow cover series. Which one of you perverts has ever drifted into a bookstore somewhere like an airport or a Greyhound bus terminal? You've all been there, right? And you see that rack of books with yellow covers. That's porno. Not the hard, well, it's hardish, okay? It's pretty hard. Like my story, it's pretty hard. That was a joke. And thank you. Whoever laughed, thank you. I get a call from a guy named David. He said, can you write a book for us? We read your spread in close up, and you're our kind of guy. I said, as I do with most things in life, I said, sure, why not? You know, fuck it, I'll do that. He said, here's the part you need to know. If you say yes today, you get 24 hours to write the book, and you get $100. I was pretty poor. I said, I'll do it. I come up with an idea. The name of the book, and if you look, you can still find it, is called Barbara. It begins with Barbara wanting to go into the bathroom, but her brother, whose name I no longer remember, is in there, and she puts her ear to the door, and her brother is jerking off. Now Barbara just has to pee, but her brother is jerking off. So she opens the door. He's got his cock in his hand. And Barbara said, you don't need this. You've got me.
Oh.
And she pleasures him. And that's how the book begins. She leaves home. She travels all across North America, involving herself in many interesting and quirky sexual exploits with men, with women, with men and women, with German shepherds, with all kinds of things. And the line I remember the most about Barbara, she's fucking a priest. And the line was, I got on my knees and I ate his holy wafer.
Oh.
Thank you.
Ta-da!
I thought we would end on something highbrow, kind of literary, fun. And by the way, I did quit the other job because I could make $100 in 24 hours for churning out these porno novels. It was pretty good money back in the day.
Hey, it's good money now. Thank you. Okay, so that is it. That is our show.
Yay!
And I'd like to thank my co-producer Jeremy Motes, who is here. I'd like to thank Allison at Strike Theater, and of course our storytellers, Sadie Bowman from Minneapolis, Kurkendaal-Barrett from New Jersey, Taylor Martin from Indianapolis, Jamie Brickhouse from New York, Caroline O'Brien from Australia, Larry Dean Harris from Los Angeles, and Maria Ghassemou from Minneapolis, and last but not least, Howard Leiberman from Minneapolis. And I'm Les Kurkendaal-Barrett from Los Angeles, California.
Wait a minute. Shut up a minute, Les. I just want to say, Strike Theater is a unique theater. I mean, some of you obviously know it. I've seen some of you at Strike. If you've got some money and you want to support a small theater that really deserves to be supported, give some money to Strike. And Jamie too, because I like Jamie. Jamie's good. Give him money.
And Jamie too, yes.
And Jamie too.
Jamie too, and Toto too. But really, Strike is one of those places you go, I gotta love this place. So please, be
Nice.
generous. if you
All
can.
right.
Thanks.
We'll check it out.
Yes, please do.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Les.
Please do.
Yay! Thank
There
you
you
guys
go.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Glad you didn't miss the plane this time, Les.
Well, I'm doing it from my living room.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
night.
Hey,
Stay
thank
safe.
you
Stay
guys.
Cheers.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Strike.
This is
Thank
fun.
you, Les. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Thanks, everyone.
Amazing.
This is fun.
It was so much fun. Thank you so much, Les. Have